to Iredale Brewing. Bit of a different video today, as you can tell by the setting. I'm in my office instead of in the brewery, and we're going to talk tech today. Specifically, we're going to talk about how to use the pill hydrometer, which I would lift up, but it's got a cord plugged into it right now, and I don't know if it's long enough. Here's the cap. Pill hydrometer, using that in conjunction with the RAPT temperature controller, so that the pill from inside your fermenter, floating around in your fermenting beer, can tell the temperature controller what to do, which is pretty darn slick. Before I proceed, I do want to make it clear this is an official BrewTubers Team Pill video. I can say that because it's not a real thing. But I just want to throw that out there to aggravate the. We have a little bit of a feud going on in BrewTubers between Team Pill and Team Tilt, and hopefully that'll aggravate the Tilt users just a little bit. But that aside, let's talk about why you might want to have your pill control your temperature or drive your temperature controller. Obvious reason is because that's going to give you the most accurate temperature reading. It's actually inside the beer. It's not taped to the side. It's not a thermo well. It's not any of that. Thermo well is probably as close as you can get to this, but this is literally floating in the beer. So that's going to give you the most accurate temperature reading. The other reason you might want to do this is it uses Bluetooth Low Energy, and so instead of Wi-Fi. So, for example, if you have your hydrometer inside a stainless steel fermenter inside a fermentation chamber, and let's say you don't have a Wi-Fi node particularly close, you don't want to get into using repeaters and whatnot. Bluetooth, it will work over a short distance much better than Wi-Fi might, depending on your situation. And since the since the temperature controller is probably right outside your fermentation chamber, that's not a long distance to go. Also, the battery lasts a lot longer with Bluetooth Low Energy. Not that that's a big deal; these batteries last forever anyway. But the other thing you can do that I'm going to talk about in a future video, because this is kind of a topic in and of itself, is you can have the pill drive pretty elaborate fermentation profiles, kind of as elaborate as you want to make them. And the cool thing there is it can be based on the actual activity inside the fermenter. So instead of just being a time-based thing where you say after 14 days, raise the temperature for a diacetyl rest or whatever the case may be, you can actually say when it hits such and such gravity, do something, take some action. And Kegland also just released a firmware update that supports gravity velocity in your profiles, which you can do things like you can say, hey, if the gravity points are dropping less than X amount over such and such period, take some action. So I'll talk about that in a future video, because I think 2 batches from now I'm going to be doing my first real lager, and the fermentation steps in that are a lot more involved than what I'm used to with ales. So we'll get into that in a future video, but just kind of be aware that that's kind of it opens the door to being able to do those sorts of things as well. So at a high level, to get this stuff working, first of all, obviously you have to have the RAPT temperature controller and a pill hydrometer. And basically, you just need to connect the RAPT temperature controller Wi-Fi. I'm not going to go over that today. I already did that for mine, but I've done nothing else except connect it to the Wi-Fi and get it set up initially. And then you change your pill to send its telemetry via Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. And then you pair the pill, or bond it is the terminology that Kegland uses, to the RAPT temperature controller. And then you basically enable Bluetooth on the RAPT temperature controller and change it to use the pill or the Bluetooth, of the pill instead of its built-in temperature probe. Now, ultimately, you wind up using both, and we'll talk about that as we get into it. That's kind of the high-level steps. And so we'll just go through those kind of one by one here. So the first thing, like I said, I'm not going to talk about connecting the RAPT temperature controller to your Wi-Fi. If you do need to do that, looks like my pill went out of captive portal mode. Let me just fix that quick, so when we get there, it'll be working. But if you do need to do that and are having trouble, kind of check the Kegland resources, or put something in the comments, and I'll obviously help as much as I can if you're having trouble getting that stuff rolling. The one thing I will say is you want to make sure before you do anything else and do the over-the-air updates for your temperature controller, which hopefully I can show this. I'm trying to look at multiple things here, but basically if you go into the settings here, just because depending on how old the firmware is on your temperature controller, you want to make sure. Oh, actually, I think it's back one screen. Sorry. I think it's all. Oh, no, it is in settings. Sorry. I'm just getting used to this thing. I've had it for a little while, but I haven't used it yet. So this is another watch Matt figure stuff out video. But basically, I think you just go to the bottom of the settings screens, if I remember right. All the way down here. Yeah, check for it. I think you can go up. So, pro tip number one, if you have to get to the bottom of the list, just hit the up button from the top of the list. But that check for OTA stands for over the air updates. You just select that, and it'll check here. So you can see checking for a new firmware update. And the only reason I'm belaboring this point is because you have to do this. If you don't do this, it might not work. And so you just want to make sure and get this out of the way. So mine says current firmware is up to date because I just did that earlier today. Just make sure you do that on your temperature controller. Also on the pill, I think there is, if I remember right, I do not have to get in and mess with the pill a whole lot, but let's check diagnostics, check for new firmware. So you want to do this on your pill as well. Um, the pill I connected over the IP address. You can also do the thing where you flip over to the pill's Wi-Fi network. And again, if you're not familiar with how to do that and can't get it figured out, I am happy to help. Just leave a comment. So I just click check for new firmware. You can see it's checking for firmware update, up to date. Okay, so we're good there. Again, you have to do that because if you don't do that and it doesn't work, in all likelihood, that's the reason. So I will flip that back to the settings screen because we'll need to do that in a second. Okay, so then the next step after all that is you want to change the pill to use Bluetooth telemetry. So to do that, you have to or to send its telemetry over Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. So to do that, you do have to plug the pill into USB-C cable to put it into what Kegland calls captive portal mode. That's where you can log in, on to this stuff and control it from your phone or computer or whatever. Actually, let's leave that pill screen up for a minute. So you do need to put it in the captive portal mode, and then again check to make sure you have the latest firmware. And then basically, you just want to flip this over to Bluetooth telemetry instead of Wi-Fi. So to do that, and I'm just referring to my notes here to make hopefully that'll save me some time and some missteps here. You do click settings, which is what we did here. So if you go into the initial when you first log into the pill, just make sure that you go down to the bottom. Doesn't matter what screen you're on. This is a persistent thing at the bottom of the screen, and click on settings. Of course, when you're on the settings screen, it won't show settings, but you get the point there. And then at the top, you see this telemetry method all the way up here, and then over on the right here, you see it set to Wi-Fi. So I'm going to want to change that to Bluetooth, and that's all you have to do to change to Bluetooth. I do want to note here. Well, actually, I have some thoughts at the end. I'll save that till the end. But if you're thinking, hey, does this break such and such? The answer is no, but we'll dig more into that a little bit later. So basically, now it's toggled to send its telemetry over Bluetooth instead of Wi-Fi. Um, and then as far as the interval, so this tells the pill how frequently to send telemetry over Bluetooth. I think the default with Wi-Fi is, let's see, it looks like 5 minutes. I thought the default. I may have messed with this one. I thought the default was longer than 5 minutes. But with Bluetooth, because the energy use is a lot lower, and again, these batteries last a long time, so it doesn't really matter that much. But since the energy use is a lot lower, you can set that to lower. I thought it defaulted to 1 minute when I was messing with this before, but I may have clicked around and messed up some stuff. So basically, um, you basically want to set this to 1 minute because again, if you're having it control the temperature of your fermentation, you kind of want it to be fairly frequent. Um, you don't want it to be too long because if it's too long, so we'll go through a scenario here. If the interval at which the pill is reporting the temperature to the temperature controller is too long, then of course it will say, "Hey, I've dropped 5 degrees in the last 30 minutes or hour or whatever the case may be." And then the temperature control will ramp up and try to get there. But in the meantime, uh, the pill is still not telling it where it is currently, so it'll overshoot probably, and that's a mess. So you want it to be relatively frequent. And from what I've read and seen on other videos about this, which I will link to a bunch of resources in the description, 1 minute is totally fine. So with that change, so again to go through this telemetry at the top, change that to Bluetooth in this drop down. And then change the interval to 1 minute, and then I think you do have to click this set interval button. I don't think there's a save button at the bottom of these screens. No, doesn't seem to be. But for fun, let's go to diagnostics and then we'll go back to settings and make sure it's stuck. Okay, so we're still on Bluetooth. We're still on 1 minute. This gravity velocity measurement time, that gets into that gravity velocity fermentation profile stuff, and I'll probably talk about that in a future video. I may not use that feature specifically, but I am absolutely going to use profiles to basically say, hey, when when it's done fermenting, start ramping up for diacetyl rest and those sorts of things. So it'll be fun to screw around with that stuff and automate some of these things. So unless I'm forgetting something, let me just check my notes. That is all you have to do for the inside the pill settings. So next, we're going to flip over to the temperature controller. And like I said, mine is set up, connected to Wi-Fi. We saw that with the firmware's up to date. So the only thing you have to do now is two things. One is you have to enable Bluetooth, which make sure, yeah, it still looks like it's on the screen, is in the settings. Bluetooth enabled. You'll see by default it's off, so you want to turn that on. And I think that's all there is to that. And then I think this is also in the settings. Let's see, Bluetooth. Okay, so you can see, I'll do this in a second, but you can see once you have Bluetooth enabled, you'll see bonded devices and unbonded devices. And you can see that my RAPT Pill temperature controller, if you have multiples in your list, you might have to do a little research on that MAC address there to see which one you're using. But since I only have one, we should be good there. So that shows that the Bluetooth is working. I'm going to go back here for a second. And actually, no, I think that is all I need to do. With Bluetooth enabled on here and Bluetooth on pill, then I think I can just, oh, there is one more setting change, but we'll go ahead and do this real quick. In Bluetooth, we'll just see it, unbonded device. You just hit the select button. It'll say bond this device. Press select to bond the device, and bam, that device is now bonded or paired, as you might use the terminology that we're all familiar with, Bluetooth speakers and all that. So now the Bluetooth, the pill is talking Bluetooth to the temperature controller. Then the last setting we need to do is we need to tell the RAPT, instead of using its built-in temperature probe, which I still have all bundled up there, but basically the thing that hangs off of there that you loop into your fermentation chamber, you just need to tell it not to use that, but instead to use the Bluetooth device. So now with Bluetooth enabled, I don't remember where this is on the settings. We'll go back up to the top, make sure I'm not missing it. Sometimes you have to scroll around. And there's a million settings you can do here. Of course, we won't get into all of those today. I may mention one or two, like allowed sensor differential. I think I will need to mention that one. Let's see here. Heating. I wonder if I am missing it. Oh, it is the very first setting. So learn from my obliviousness to that fact. So you can see it says temperature setting or temperature sensor built in. Hit that, and because I have that pill bonded to the temperature controller, we just say we want to use the RAPT Pill. Hit select, and now it's going to use the RAPT Pill. Let's go back to the main screen. Okay, so you can see a couple things here. Normally on this main screen on the temperature controller, you would just see, the temperature of from the probe itself. But now you can see it is more like what you're seeing if you have a Brazilla and you're using the Bluetooth thermometer. So if you're familiar with that, this will seem all very similar. So basically, you see here it says RAPT Pill. It says that the temperature on the pill is 83 degrees. It's not 83 degrees in my room, but since I still have it plugged in, I think because it's plugged in and charging, that's amping the temperature up a little bit, which is good because I want to make sure it did show that the temperature was reading something different than the built-in sensor, which is 67.4. So that's probably close to the air temperature in my office here. And then you'll see this number below there. That's the specific gravity. So you can actually see on this display what your specific gravity is inside the fermenter. Obviously, it's just laying on my desk, so weird reading there, but it's laying outside, and that's what that's what it works out to be. So you can see the target down here I have set to 66, and you see because the pill is saying it's 83 because it's hot from charging, that the cooling function has kicked on. So this all seems to be working. So that is awesome. Now, what I will say is, even though you are now having the pill drive the temperature controller, you still want to use the built-in probe and tape that to the side of the fermenter for a couple of reasons. One is if for some reason the pill stops talking to the temperature controller, then you have nothing. Well, sorry, I should say by default it will fall back to the internal probe. So, say for whatever reason you lose Bluetooth connectivity between the pill and the temperature controller, it will fall back to the built-in probe. But if you don't have that built-in probe situated such that it's beneficial to keep the fermentation temperature where you want it, like say you just had it hanging outside of the refrigerator or your fermentation chamber, which in my case is an upright freezer, um, it would be all out of whack because in my case, if I didn't put it in there and tape it to the side of the fermenter, it was just hanging out in the garage. Currently, it's winter. It would be pretty cold and it would do all sorts of wacky stuff, and you don't want that. And then the other thing is, at least according to Kegland, it's kind of like that. Again, going back to the Brucilla comparison, it's kind of like you have those 2 points. You got the temperature probe at the bottom of the Brucilla, and you got the Bluetooth one that's in the wort as you're brewing. Um, should say in the mash because once it's past the mash, you don't care. Similar deal here. It just gives it 2 points of reference to hopefully keep things more stable. Because you got, in the fermenter, you got that big thermal mass that's going to react more slowly to temperature changes than the air in your fermentation chamber. So it's kind of good to have two data points that keeps things pretty stable so that it's not, again, making big changes and potentially over or undershooting your fermentation, your target temperature for your fermentation. I think that is about it. The only other things I wanted to note, on the temperature controller, as with all temperature controllers, just make sure that you have some sort of a time delay with your compressor so that it's not totally thrashing all the time, making slight adjustments because that can really trash your compressor. On my Inkbird, I think I have it set to 5 minutes. I think the default on this one is to set to two. I'll probably put it up to five because that seems to be working okay to keep the temperature relatively stable. Um, let's see here. I'm just checking my notes to make sure I don't miss anything. I talked about how you want to use the pill and the probe. So in my case, now once I start using this, I'm still going to just tape the built-in probe or the internal probe to the side of the fermenter, or put it in thermo well. Maybe I haven't really. I have a couple options for thermo well, and I got a Firmzilla for Christmas, so I'll figure out what'll work best there. But at any rate, use both as a point of reference. And then I think, as with, again, with the Bruzilla, I believe that in settings, you do want to, oops, I always get those buttons wrong. You do want to go down to the allowed difference between the two, allowed separate sensor difference. It's set to 9 degrees. Um, you probably don't want that to be, well, you definitely, to me, you don't definitely don't want it to be that high. But you probably don't want it to be super, low either. I might set that to a couple of degrees or something like that. If you get much below that, it probably gets a little bit crazy. And again, the main thing is, it provided that the pill is talking to the temperature controller fine, that'll be your best indication of what the actual temperature is. So you don't want it to, anyway. Just, you might need to mess with that setting. I'm probably going to set it to a couple degrees or something like that. I may need to do a little bit more research. If I find better information, I'll put it uh, on the screen or in the comments. And I think that's pretty much all you need to really worry about. And then the last point I want to make that I referenced earlier is, you may be thinking, okay, but I have my pill set up with a webhook to talk to Brewfather, and is changing it from Wi-Fi to Bluetooth going to break all that? And the good answer is no, or the good news is no. And the reason is because all you're doing when you change this is you're changing the protocol by which the pill communicates or sends its telemetry. So instead of saying, "Hey, pill, send Wi-Fi to my Wi-Fi network," and then that goes into the RAPT portal, and by virtue of the fact that it's getting into the RAPT portal, when you set up that webhook in the RAPT portal, that's what talks to Brewfather. Um, that the nice thing is, because you have that layer of indirection in there, that stuff all works still, because it's still reporting out. Ultimately, it's just Bluetooth, the temperature controller. The temperature controller is then talking to the RAPT portal, and then that webhook will still get triggered. I do need to, I haven't verified that that is actually the case, but I have no reason to believe that that won't be the case. And based on what I've read, yeah, it absolutely does not mess that up. So you shouldn't be concerned about that. It'll still work just fine, as it did before. So I think that is about it. Hope that was helpful. It's maybe a little bit rambling as I'm trying to juggle all these things, but I hope that gives you some indication of how you can get your pill to talk to your RAPT temperature controller, some of the benefits. We'll get more into this stuff in the future. Like I said, for that lager I'm going to brew, I definitely will probably take advantage of the definitely probably will take advantage of the automation around that because I'm going to be doing stuff like, hey, I want you to, kind of ramp up slowly to the diacetyl rest and then ramp down slowly for a cold crash. It's going to be a lot easier to do that because in the profiles in here, you can say, hey, drop to this temperature over this amount of time, and it will just very slowly do that for you. So you don't have to be out there, you don't have to remind yourself every day or every 12 hours or whatever the recommendation is. I got to drop the temperature a little bit. So all this automation is going to be really slick. I don't know that there's a whole lot. I don't know. Just looking at the wrapped portal hill here, I don't know that there was a lot to do to show you here, other than this stuff will still work. I guess. Yeah, I don't really even know why I pulled that up. The more important thing was the wrapped pill settings. But anyway, I think that is it for this video. Like I said, I will put I have 2 or 3 videos that I saw that I found helpful that I'll put links to those in the description for reference. And hope you find that helpful. And I will report back on how this actually works in practice when I brew my first beer using or ferment my first beer using this method in about a week or so. Thanks for watching, and we will see you in the next one.